So I have laid out here in front of me all of the pieces for the stationary back section of the right section of the house. The two side walls, the back wall, the bottom of the section, and the roof. So let's work on some prep here. I'm going to start with the roof, so I'll just put these pieces aside. Now the roof has one side that is 5 7/8 inches across, and that's the side you want to have facing you. And the first thing we want to do is cut a notch out of this right side, and that notch is going to be 3 3/8 inches long and 1/4 inch wide. So we'll mark a line, and I'm just going to use my cutting mat here to mark a line that is 1/4 inch in from this right edge. And then the notch itself, I'm just going to turn it around here, and it measures 3 3/8. Sorry, I keep pausing to check my notes over here. 3 3/8 long. So we'll cut that 1/4 inch section out of the roof, and it will then look like this. Now, this roof, this notch we cut here is for the chimney to fit in, and the so that this edge that's facing me right now, this is towards the open, goes towards the front of the house, and this side over here is the back. The side on my left this is where the interior wall is, and this is where the exterior wall is on the right. So the left house is coming in over here. We want to cut a 5 and we want to cut a 5 3/8 inch joining strip. I think I already have one cut here. Yes, 5 3/8. And we're going to fold it so that the score tape is towards the inside. And that is going to come along this front and get matched up with the notch that we just cut. You'll see that it's 1/4 inch short over here on this interior side, and that is by design. So we're going to attach that right directly onto the outside of this roof piece so that this edge will hang down. And when you do that, you could even bring it a little bit forward of the edge that we're putting it on, the score line, just a little bit forward, because the roof will come in at an angle, and this piece is going to help us join the front of the house. So if we take that crease just a little bit past that angle, it'll make it easier to make that join. So again, I'm just going to take off one side of this score tape, and I'm going to put this edge even with the cut edge here, but instead of bringing it right exactly up against that edge, I'm just bringing it forward a little bit. And so then it will be 1/4 inch short over on this edge, and we'll give that a burnish. The next thing we want to do is flip this so that the score tape that we just added is on the edge away from us. And let's make a 1/4 inch line, pencil line, along each of the side edges And for this one over here, it's just extending this notch. So we're only making the 1/4 inch line in from the outside, this outside line. So just kind of extend that notch line. And that will help us line up the roof when we go to put it on the structure. So flipping it back over to this side that we were working on to begin with, this is our outside. We're going to add some pattern paper. And the paper I'm going to use is from a 6x6 pad. And what I'm going to do is just cover the roof exactly. I will ignore this, the joining strip up here. So what I'll do is bring that edge of the paper right to the edge of the cardstock when I put it down, so that I won't have to do any cutting up here. And the only cutting I'll have to do is around this edge and this edge here. So I'll put some score tape on here and then do that cutting. I'll probably put a couple strips across the center. There's nothing getting added onto this roof, so we don't need to do what I've called before the abundant score tape. And what I would say is for the edge that's going to get attached where the joining strip is, put the score tape on the edge of the paper. The balance of it can go along the edge of the roof. I misspoke when I said nothing gets attached to this roof. I forgot about the chimney. So I think you can see that I've added some extra score tape here, just coming in about 1.5 inches or so from where we cut that notched edge. So that will help with making sure that the chimney gets attached. And then I'll come in here and just add a couple of other little strips just to have some interim support. And then I've attached my strip to the top of this paper that I can use along the top edge here where the hinge is. And so now I'll put this paper down. I finished my roof prep and now I'm going to put it aside. And turn my attention to the walls. Now the walls have a 45-degree angle for the roof, and since they are 3.5 inches wide, we're going to mark a point down on the side, and that's 3.5 inches from the top, and connect the dots and make the diagonals. We're going to end up with, they look exactly the same right now, but when we put them together, obviously they'll have to have be mirror images. So let's talk about how this is going to go together. This is our base section here, and towards me is the opening in the front part of the house. This would be the back part of the house over here. And so when the sides go on, the peak comes towards the opening. So that, see if I can open it this way. So I'm putting them in this way. The short side is towards the back, and the tall side is towards me, which is also the opening. So, and the left side of the house is over here by where I'm wiggling my fingers, and the outside of the house, the right side of the house, is over on this side where now I'm wiggling my fingers. So I've written on both of these stationary interior, no windows, and I know that there's no windows on either of these sides, and this is the stationary exterior, there's no windows. So let's look at the interior side first. and I want to add a joining strip. And this one again is going to be creased so that its score tape is on the inside. And it's going to come on the outside along the long vertical edge. We'll want to trim it up here at the top so that it matches that point. And we're sticking it down so similar to the tower, the frame is going to come in here, and this hinge will be used to join that frame. Now this one is slightly different than the tower because that frame sits on the outside of this wall, so that when we put this joining strip down, we want to keep it a 1/16 of an inch gap between the score line and the edge of our wall, so that instead of having this strip come butted up exactly against this edge, we're holding it back a 1/16 of an inch. And I'm just going to do that with, I've got a spare scrap of chipboard here that I can use to stick inside, and so that when I go to put this down, I can keep that edge a 1/16 of an inch away. So I'm just going to do this kind of in sections because this is a lot of real estate here, and it gets to be tricky to control it. So I'm just holding that edge right up against there, and then bringing in my piece. I'm looking at that bottom corner. I've got it good up to there, so now I'll reach in here and remove the rest of the score tape backing. I'm still keeping that 1/16 inch piece of chipboard in there, and now I can remove it, and now I have the perfect gap inside of here, so that when the niche frame, the inset frame front comes in there, it will have just enough room to fit. So now I'm going to trim this off, and I'm going to trim it even with the roof at the top, and then I'm just for now just going to come straight across when I get to that top edge, so that I've removed this kind of a section. So now we're ready to add some pattern paper to this side wall, and we're going to get it from the piece of green paper that we cut the 2 3/4 inch strips from the top when we were working on the tower's trim. So what we need to start with is a strip that is 9 by 12. So I'm just cutting off this piece up here, and we can reserve that for other uses. And then, so out of this piece that's 9 by 12, I've got one piece that's 6 3/8 inches wide. So this piece is 6 3/8 by 9, and we'll be using that in a few minutes for the back of the right house. And then from the remainder, I cut a strip that's 4 inches tall and a strip that's 5 inches tall. So this strip that is 4 by 5 and 4 by 5 and 5/8, that we're going to use on the fireplace, so I've tagged it for the fireplace. And then from the 5 inch tall section, I've cut a piece that is 3 5/8 inches wide, 3 5/8 inches wide by 5 inches tall, and that's what we're actually going to use over here on this part of the house. And then this is just a little piece of scrap. So we'll reserve those in case we need them. This we'll reserve for the fireplace, and this we'll just need in a few minutes for the back of the house. So here, this piece is just a little bit wider than what the width of it is now, so that by 1/16 of an inch, and that 1/16 of an inch can just hang over the back of the house and come up to the edge, or you can actually, I think I'm going to just trim it off a little bit just so I don't have to be concerned with that overage. So I'm just going to cut a 1/16 of an inch off the side of this house. There we go. Okay. And now, the reason we're doing this to conserve paper, this part of the house is covered by the left side of the house, so we don't need to waste any of our shortage of paper on there. So I'm just lining up this piece with the top of the house here and the score in our joining strip, and I'm drawing a line here at the bottom. So what we want to do is I'm going to put abundant score tape coming from that top edge down to the bottom. I won't come close to these two edges because I'll get those edges on the paper here. And then also the two vertical edges I'm just going to hit with a little bit of ink. There's no need to do it on the top or the bottom. So let me put some score tape on and then I'll be back. I'm back. I've put some score tape on kind of just shy of this line here and just shy of the folded edge of the joining strip over here. And then I put some on the long edge, the bottom edge, and just coming up this side a little bit. So I'm going to put this on and then trim off the roof. So really, when you go to join this on, you don't want to join probably about 5/8 of an inch or so of this edge over here, because the back paper has to wrap around this corner, and I forgot about that. So what I've done is I've just peeled it back. Before I burnished, I remembered that, and I've just got a little scrap here of score tape on there. So then this side is all ready to go. So now we're ready to work on the other side wall, and again what we want to do is add a joining strip to the long edge here on the outside facing inwards like this. And again what we want to do is leave a 1/16 of an inch spacing in between there. So I've just got my extra piece of chipboard that I've got, and I will add that joining strip to this side. So we're going to cut the pattern paper for this side, and again we're going to conserve a little paper because this is the area where the chimney will come up, so we can we don't need to put paper behind where the chimney is going to be. So this is our third piece of the green paper. I haven't done any cutting on this at all yet, and I'm going to cut a 2-inch wide strip going the entire vertical length, so 2 inches wide by 12 inches tall, and we'll use that for the this side of the house. So I've cut my 2-inch wide piece of my pattern paper, and I don't want to attach it yet, but I will put it on with some temporary adhesive just so I can cut that roof line. I also have measured up from the bottom 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to let that 3/8 of an inch overhang down at the bottom and just line up that 3/8 of an inch and the side of the and this side, and now I can trim this off. So I haven't, I can put some score tape on this and prep for adhering it later, but we won't join it at this time. So I have both of my sides basically prepped here. This one has pattern paper on it. This one piece of pattern paper is prepped to add at a later time. And the last thing I need to do is on the inside of the roof edge, I just want to add a joining strip right along that ridge line. And I'll do that on the inside of both of our pieces here, and we'll give that a burnish. And trim this off, I guess. Okay. So now there are our sides for the stationery part completed. Now we'll turn our attention to the back wall, and the first thing we want to do is to cut our window openings. And so here on template 4, T4, the middle drawing refers to the back. And you can see here that what we've measured up, we measure up 1 3/4 inches. Then 2 1/4 is the height of our window opening. There's 2 1/4 inches in between the two openings, and then there's 1 1/4 inch opening at the top. These windows are in the center of the back, and since the back is 5 1/4 inches wide, we're measuring in 1 1/4 inch. The openings are 2 3/4 inches wide, and that leaves us with another 1 1/4 inch on the other side. So we'll cut those two openings, which I have already done in the interest of time. And now we want to add score tape around our openings and all the edges, basically. So I will do that, and then I'll be back. So I've added score tape around all of my openings and the edges, and now we're ready to add pattern paper. If you recall from a few minutes ago, we had cut a piece of paper for the back that was 6 3/8 inches wide by 9 inches tall. Now that is taller than the back, but that's fine. We want something to hang over that bottom edge. So what we want to do first, you can see I have my scoring board here, and I want to score 1/2 inch in on both sides. And I just switched it around so I don't have to think about where 1/2 inch is in on that 6 3/8 inch side. Now we'll just fold along these score lines and give them a burnish. And we can add some score tape to the inside of both of these tabs. And then we can also add a piece of score tape between the two score lines here at the bottom. Okay. So when we go to put this on, obviously we'll remove our tape backing and we will line it up with the top, and then just like when we were working on the left section, there's some play. There's 1/8 of an inch of play in between these two side score lines. And so what we'll want to do is split the difference between the two sides. So we have a 1/16 of an inch space between the wall and the fold on either side. So I'm going to do that, then cut and trim my windows, and I'll be back. So I have my windows trimmed out, and I have the edges prepped for when we go to join them. And the next thing will be to put in the windows here, but before I do that, I want to add a joining strip to the inside here at the roof line. So I've just cut one to fit right inside the top here, and I'll give that a burnish. And now it's a matter of, just like we've done before, just attaching our windows inside, deciding if we're going to have anything to decorate the windows, and then finish by putting the black cardstock behind the windows. I've finished decorating the back wall. You can see I have the windows in and some little oddities in the windows. So now it's time to put the three sides together, and they go in this order. The exterior wall, we're looking at the outsides here, of course. The exterior wall is here, and eventually we'll put this piece of paper on there, and then the interior wall here. So we're going to put these together with butt joints from the inside. So we'll just flip this assembly all the way over. And what we want to do is just add our joining strips so that the base of all the walls are even here. So we'll just add a joining strip here and here. And now that we have our two walls attached, we'll go ahead and use a butt joint to attach our bottom of this part. And we'll just put some joining strips on three sides here. Give that a burnish. And again, we're using butt joint to put it against the back section here, and we'll give that a burnish. And then when we bring up the two sides, we're just going to kiss these edges. It does not, nothing gets overlapped on either side here when we join these two, just a kissed edge. Give that a burnish on the inside and repeat that over on this side. And we have this edge still overhanging at this point. And now we can add our base that we constructed a while ago. Now, when we're putting this on, remember that the bottom has the inset piece, and the top kind of has this little raised platform thing going on. That's the side we're going to attach, and as you can see, I put some score tape on here. And this magnet faces this direction. And when we put this on here, the side edges should align on the left and right here. And when we look at the front here, the two tops should align. They're both set in a 1/16 of an inch because of how they were constructed. So that's how they go together. And everything else should stay nice and square here. So I think what I'll do is I'll pull this score tape backing off, and I'll put a little wet glue on here as well. Now I'm just pressing down to engage that score tape all around, which will help hold it in place while the glue dries. And now we can remove the score tape backing from these tabs. I'm just continuing the back down here, and now we'll remove this tab and pick up this edge up here and allow that to wrap around. Then we can remove this backing. So that makes a nice edge there. And then go ahead and wrap this edge. And we can put this piece of paper on, lining up all these edges. And we'll give this a nice good burnish. So now we're coming along here. Of course, we will bring our foundation paper along the bottom, just like we did on the tower and the left section. So then we'll flip this over, and I've cut a piece of black cardstock here. There is no scoring on it. It's 3/4 of an inch by 5 1/8, and I'm just going to draw a line here to help me guide myself along. That's 3/8 of an inch from the top of the side here. Get these flaps out of the way. And I'm just going to center this along that line and give that a burnish. This will eventually join the frame at the bottom. So now we're ready to put our roof on. And the first thing we can do is to get our inset, and you might not have cut yours yet. This is it could be a solid piece, it doesn't matter, because we're just going to temporarily put it in here. This is the piece that is down here. It's part of the niche assembly, and it's 5 3/8 by 11 3/4. And for what we're doing right now, if you haven't cut the frame out yet, that's fine, because what we want to do is it's going to get tucked down inside of here so that it is sitting and let's see if I can bring the camera down here. This frame comes all the way down and is on top of the front of the base here. It's sitting in, there's a little recessed part there, so that when you look up here at the top, it should come about even with our strips that we joined on here. It may be a little bit taller than the roof pieces, but I'm just going to take a little bit of temporary tape here, or you could use temporary adhesive, and it is going to go, remember how we left that 1/16 inch gap when we put these joining strips on? That's to allow this to fit inside there. So I'm just making sure. I know this black on black is a little tricky. I'm making sure it's fitting in that gap and sitting right like that. So that helps, that's going to help us figure out where to put our roof on. So when the roof comes on, up here at the top, this strip that we added at the top and scored will come right along the inside of this frame. So that helps you know how high up to bring the roof. And then to figure out, we're not going to join this strip right, it doesn't get joined right now. But then on this side with the cutout, the edge of this cutout runs right along the edge of the roof, just right on top of it, so that the chimney can come up and goes past the roof smoothly. And then we have our 1/4 inch lines drawn on both this little section down here and over on this side, and they'll help you align the roof and keep it square. So the only thing we're going to join with is on the inside. You remember how we added joining strips to the top of the angles? And there's one on the top of the back wall. Those are the things we're going to engage. So I think to start with, what I'm going to do, I'll zoom out now that we've seen where it's going to go. I'm going to get this edge by the fireplace and the top put in place, and I'm just going to hold that there with some temporary tape as well. Then over on this side I should see my 1/4 inch line, and I do. So I'm going to put some temporary tape right there. And it probably would have been smart to release these score tapes before I started doing this. A little tricky to get at them. I'm just going to flip this lid up and get at them here. So I'm just pushing all of these score tapes out of the way so they don't engage prematurely. Alright, so got our top of our roof where we want it. So I'm going to start by joining this edge where the chimney is going to come in. And then I'm going to continue down, looking at my 1/4 inch line up here. Checking to see that I still have everything where I want it to be. And then we'll come over on this side and look at that 1/4 inch line. Make sure our roof up here is where we want it to be. And then engage this side piece of tape. And sometimes these corners need to be just encouraged to be flat a little bit. So I'm just putting a little pressure on each corner before I engage the score tape along the back wall. And then I'm finishing by joining that back. And then we'll check here and see if everything is looking good. So we have our 1/4 inch overhang on this side, the side that's going to join the left house. We have a little bit of 1/4 inch overhang still here. The chimney will come in here. And that's basically our back part. Now we can gently remove this temporary tape we used here. And we'll set this frame aside. And now we can easily reach into burnish the joins we just made. So that is the stationary section of the house completed. We will have to put some foundation paper and some other things on it, but this is the point we want to get to at this stage. So now we're ready to look at constructing the moving part of the right section of the house.